nonsense.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
About the past and about the future.
Welcome back to Draftvice, everybody. Why is the camera all fuzzy? What's going on here? Look into my face. Say hello. Is it? What's going on, autofocus? Oh, it's coming. It's coming. All right, we're good. We're good. Welcome back to Draftvice, everybody. And it's another midnight mock draft. Yes. And I just finished recording a lovely episode that'll be up Wednesday. And with that episode, we're getting into prospects. I had a guest on, everybody. Oh, a guest. Yes, his name is Marcus Harvey. He's a Browns fan, but he's also a draftnik like myself. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of the receivers, and I mean a bunch of the receivers in this draft. I'll also be posting up the first half of the interview tomorrow, which will be about, mostly about the Browns. So if you're into Browns content, y'all, check that out. And if you're not into Browns content, you're just into wide receiver content, check that out too. I'll also be going into edge rushers this week, all the sexy positions, if you will. And if you want, go ahead, leave a comment down below. I'll try to answer while I do the midnight mock draft tonight. And without further ado, without further ado, be hopping right on to this. We're back at PFN. I like this one because we can do a couple of trades here. We only have a couple of weeks left, everybody, right? If you want, you can follow the podcast at Draftvice on Twitter, at Draftvice_football on Instagram. You can follow me at BROJO. Death is in the end of life. Punch a delicious drink you drink in the summer. Yes, and there's going to be episodes every day for the next couple of weeks until the draft, and in which case I'm working on maybe a special thing to do for the draft. And, yes, so let's mock to the left. Everybody you own in a mock to the left. Anything else? Any other news? Any other topics? Let people kind of wander in. Not much to say. There's a little bit of news for the Browns that they have Jadeveon Clowney potentially coming in for a second visit. That's about the extent of that stuff. I am ready to start this mock draft because I don't think anybody cares about Trevor. You know, the first pick in the NFL draft is Trevor Lawrence. It feels like that's already a thing, and we'll be over on this side for the most part. So number 1 overall, Trevor Lawrence. Number 2 overall, well, will it be for the Jets? Will it be Justin Fields? Is it all smokescreen, malarkey? Is it really the Jets taking Zach Wilson, number 2 overall? How do you feel about that topic, Walter? How do you feel about Mr. Zach Wilson? I like Wilson. I do. I think there's some things to really like about his game. He fits very well in the Shanahan play-action offense, which, listen, already accentuates a lot of things that certain players might do well, but he can make all the throws in it to be a special kind of player in that style of offense. He has the arm to make all the throws, but he also has the mind and kind of the artistic integrity to be able to make throws off of platform, to go off a script. He also, I've always been worried about his durability, and that is a worry, right, with Zach Wilson. But the thing that I do like, his pocket presence is really good. The only worry I have with Zach Wilson outside of the injury is he might throw a couple of picks in the NFL, but at least he's not going to have the Tua issue where he's worrying about things like, is this guy NFL open? No, he's not, because he did throw to guys who were not necessarily NFL open because he wasn't necessarily throwing to receivers that are going to be top end picks in the NFL draft, guys who weren't wide open. He was throwing a lot of 50-50 balls and deep balls, and he was he banking on his receiver going up and getting that. So at 2 overall, we're going Zach Wilson. I know there's a good debate to be had with Justin Fields. I would be picking Justin Fields here just because the combination of athleticism and accuracy, I have a hard time buying that Justin Fields isn't the guy at 3. Here, though, I think I made a promise to stop doing what I would do and at least do a couple of mocks where, listen, we get to test out the concept of maybe not having Justin Fields go 3 overall. I would take Justin Fields here because I think the athleticism and accuracy is truly, God damn, I think the athleticism is there. I think the accuracy is there. The problem is he didn't really utilize his athleticism all that much. Like, he wasn't used as a designated runner often. Every once in a while he was when they got off script, when they needed the offense to kind of get going again. But it wasn't like an overall, like, hey, it has to be, we have to do this kind of thing. He was utilized more as a, and also going off a script was kind of a weird thing with Fields. The thing that I like about Wilson that I might feel a little worried about with Fields is I don't know if he created really well when he wasn't working off a script. Not when he was, when things did not go his way. That and sometimes the questions about his still processing, I still would take him, but there are some arguments. I don't know who other than Chris Sims making them publicly. Now, the 49ers and the Patriots are going to Justin Fields' pro day come his second pro day, so they can go ahead and watch him throw to do their full assessment. There's going to be a second pro day for Trey Lance. They're all getting second pro days, which are essentially just extra workout days. You can't do private workouts anymore because of the COVID issue. But right here, I have Mac Jones going, this is what the rumors are, right? This is what the rumor mill is. I addressed it a couple weeks ago. Could it be Trey Lance as well? I think they're going to do their assessment of Trey Lance, the 49ers. I think all three of these guys would fit in that offense really well. I think Shanahan has some familiarity with Justin Fields from being part of the QB collective. I kind of get what the process is behind Mac Jones, though, because I know a lot of people have been talking about the Kirk Cousins connection, always very similar to Kirk Cousins, and he wanted Kirk Cousins. And yes, I know Kyle Shanahan came out and said, listen, that was the guy who I wanted then, but that doesn't mean like we couldn't go for an athletic QB at some point somewhere down the line. I don't hate that argument. I think that's a fine thing. I think the reverse end of that is he stood on a table for Kirk Cousins back when, we're talking about when he was with Washington, for Washington to draft Kirk Cousins. So there's even an argument here. Like, remember, they did this in the same draft where they drafted RG3. So I don't know, man. There's some questions to that. If maybe he does, say, believe more in this kind of a style quarterback. I don't know if they made the decision yet. I don't know if he had already met with him. The one thing that got pointed out, I mean, I did listen to a thing recently with a beat reporter, and he said part of it was Saban never got asked by the 49ers about Mac Jones. I think there's some real arguments either way that they might be going Mac Jones or not. But I feel like I spend every week starting out with these three and spending so much time talking about the quarterbacks, I just go breathless. So, Mac Jones at 3. 4, Kyle Pitts, Trey Lance, Justin Fields now is on the table as well. I think if they took Justin Fields here, it would be a nightmare scenario because you'd have a guy who's a homegrown guy from Georgia who potentially you could be running the risk of, hey, everybody wanting him out on the field. Meanwhile, you already have you already have Matt Ryan who you're planning to start. I think the idea was maybe take Trey Lance here, potentially if they were going to stay here, or take Kyle Pitts. I think the other option is going to be a trade. And again, for this, we need to go with, sorry, I got a messy desk. For this, we need to go to the trade simulator. All right, so who might come up here? Well, I think there's absolutely one team that will come up, right? And it is the New England Patriots. And they will be coming up to trade with the Atlanta Falcons because we're already on their pick. And at 5th, Patriots are pretty far back, 15, right? What can get them to come up to 4? It's got to be a first rounder next year. It's got to be a second rounder this year. But that's fine because they spent a lot of draft capital trying to maneuver this draft. I think they got to go 3rd round pick next year as well. Maybe they throw in one of their 4ths this year. This simulator doesn't allow you to go ahead and do a 2023 pick, but you can trade 2023 picks. This is what I'm going to propose right now. It's been accepted, everybody. It's been accepted. And now at the 4th pick overall, the New England Patriots take one Mr. Justin Fields. Where the hell is he? Oh, there he is. Yes. And like I said before, I now here's the thing. After the whole trade for Sam Darnold, the Panthers aren't necessarily in having to trade up mode. So it's possible the Falcons don't get any value for the 4th overall pick, right? They might sit there and say, like, we're not getting any real calls. We don't think we can really trade down with what's on the table. We'll just take Kyle Pitts at 4 overall. I think that's actually a real possibility, especially after the trade for Carolina, because now who are you jumping in front of? Carolina is already, got a quarterback, and maybe they take one of the following ones. Maybe you're trading in front of Detroit if the right one falls to Detroit. I think the Patriots are behooved to move up to 4 in this scenario, though, because the Bengals don't trade ever for some reason. It's just not in their lifeblood or history. And the Miami Dolphins, I wouldn't want to be the Patriots having to try to trade with the Miami Dolphins. Just seems like it's going to be putting yourself in a rock and a hard place. Denver Broncos and Panthers could still... Denver Broncos, Detroit Lions, Panthers could also make arguments for taking a quarterback. There's also the potential for other teams to jump up the board. We know Washington has maybe mentioned being interested in Trey Lance. And in fact, there might be a trade later on in this draft where Washington comes up for Trey Lance. Those might be rumors and smoke screens and things that are being suckered out there a little bit. But I don't hate the idea. And I think Trey Lance would be an interesting pickup for them because they could sit him behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. Especially if he ends up being the 5th QB off the board. Like I said, you're now at 5. Now the Bengals come up on the board. There's been a lot of debate of who they take at 5. Would they take Kyle Pitts? Would they take Jamar Chase? Would they take Penny Sewell? I know a lot of people who have been pro Sewell the whole offseason, and now it seems like the Bengals fans are like, wait a second. This is a deep draft. And there might be an offensive lineman to take in the 2nd round. Now, I don't know if I would agree with this concept, but I think we did it last week with Jamar Chase. And the value of taking the thing about if you take, say, somebody like Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase up here is you're going to push the tackles down the board, right? So as you draft one of these high-end offensive weapons, the tackles are going to go lower. And if there's an offensive lineman you like at, say, in the 30s where the Bengals are taking or drafting, they could take one of those guys. And if those guys are even average, their offensive line's better. They're now taking shots on guys. Now, I would obviously, if I'm at 5, try and trade back, if you will. But I don't think that the Bengals just never do that. Jamar Chase would be a great pickup for them. They kind of need that outside wide receiver to be because again, like Tyler Boyd runs almost entirely out of the slot, and then T. Higgins just doesn't have any like real long speed to him. I could see them going Jamar Chase here. I could also see them taking Kyle Pitts here, and then maybe later on taking a guy like a Dwayne Eskridge or a somebody like Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn. Somebody who's a deep threat who they could take maybe 3rd round or even to go ahead and be the deep threat in that offense because they do need a little bit more speed. I think this is why I'm going Kyle Pitts here. They lost a lot of targets to A.J. Green leaving in free agency. Not that they were all good targets, but still they lost targets. Kyle Pitts, 5, Bengals. This is where the fall stops for one of the best players in this draft. At 6 overall, Miami Dolphins are on the board. They could take Penny Sewell. They could take Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. I think it's Jamar Chase here. I think their plans here are either they are... Oh, wait, that's kind of weird. I think I said this a while ago, right? I think this actually was on another mock draft where I was kind of looking at Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle. And I keep on wanting to get to these points and have, like, Pitts still on the board, but... I could easily see the Bengals taking Jamar Chase and Pitts still being on the board. I think if that was the case, Miami would go with Pitts. With Pitts off the board, with that offensive weapon, I think when you look at Jamar Chase, what he adds to an offense, I think he's got enough of a different skill set. Now, I also question how teams will feel about about Devonta Smith's athleticism and his size question marks, and then Jalen Waddle with the ankle. So I do think for a lot of teams, even though Jamar Chase opted out, Jamar Chase had such a good year in 2019. It might be very hard for some of them to go ahead and say, you know what, we just don't want this guy to be we don't want this guy to be our wide receiver one. We want to go a different route. So at 6 overall, I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle because what this guy brings, and when we do when the next episode comes out of Draftvice and we do the wide receiver look at this draft, you will hear quite a lot of talk about what Jalen Waddle brings to the table. He's got quick feet, hip fluidity. He can get downfield really fast, but not only that, he can move side to side fast. If this guy ends up falling, and he could easily have like that CeeDee Lamb style fall, if he falls, some team's going to get a steal. And it's just with that level of athleticism, there's very few who have that level of athleticism in the NFL. 7 overall, and he's also, when you look at what that team has, he would add such a dynamic element to, yes, you have Kyle Fuller, but he's not playing the first week or two of the year. You have Preston Smith, Devonta Parker. Those guys don't necessarily get separation the way Waddle will get separation. And plus, you can run Waddle out of the slot initially, and you would have this dynamic, fast offense that just pulls the defense away from your front and would open up the run game. So, Jalen Waddle at 6. 7. Again, another team's got to go wide receiver right away. I also think the Lions would maybe be the team that would trade back. And but the problem here is, if Washington was really the team trading up, first off, who are they getting in front of? I don't think the Broncos take Trey Lance. I think that's another project quarterback who is going to be a real mess if you're trying to have him compete with Drew Lock, and I could see them doing it. I just don't see it being the way that they go. I think they're more likely to trade back as well. I think it's 7 overall. I think their calls don't get answered. I think they stick with what they believe is a blue ribbon prospect in this draft, and they go Jamar Chase. 8 overall. Again, another team that could trade. I think the next two teams could easily trade back. I think the Panthers did not like Trey Lance. They did not feel comfortable having him be their starter going into this year. They did not want to sit him behind Teddy Bridgewater. They wanted to make a decision quick. They didn't have to expend an asset on quarterback. Again, I think these 3 picks right here are all looking for people to trade up. I think it's the price that comes down to it. And I think with the Panthers on the board, what they look at with their draft prospects, I think they're actually a very big team now to trade back, especially because no offensive linemen have come off the board. So, NFC East is trading up. That's right, the NFC East. Washington calls up the Carolina Panthers, and they decide, hey, listen, you know what? Panthers, we're down at 19. So we'll give you a first next year, right? This is similar to we're going to give you some stuff similar to what we might have what was traded a few years ago to come up to that range, right? But we'll give you a little bit more, right? What if we gave you 74? Right? 3rd round pick in this draft. We also give you a first next year to come up. Trade's been accepted, right? Now Washington's up at 8, right? It only cost them a 1st round pick next year and a 3rd round pick this year, pick 74. They get to keep more picks for the future. Panthers now go ahead and get to build up assets for the future. So if Sam Darnold doesn't work out, which I think is their plan, if Sam Darnold doesn't work out, they can now utilize these assets to go ahead and build around Sam Darnold. I'm sure Washington doesn't want to give up a 1st round pick, but I think this maneuver is smart on their end, right? Because hopefully if your team works out this year, you're not drafting that high. You now don't have to play Trey Lance right away. Ron Rivera has experience having a very athletic quarterback, and he wanted that. He likes that. That's what he digs. Like even with Kyle Allen, even with, yes, I know Ron Fitzpatrick is not the most athletic quarterback. These are all guys who move. Taylor Heineke, Kyle Allen, Cam Newton, Trey Lance. These are all guys who moved way better than Dwayne Haskins, who can get, if they get moved off the spot, they can still create plays. So at 8 overall, the Washington football team drafts Trey Lance. 9, the Denver Broncos are on the board. No quarterbacks left. So they can't trade back here, right? They're kind of like SOL a little bit. So what do? Penny Sewell's on the board. Kind of a weird spot for him. Because I think the Broncos could take him and switch him over to right tackle. I think there are people who think he's that level of a prospect. Do they draft for need here? Is there a need still left on the roster outside of quarterback? And I think defensively there might be. But what if there was a team that would be willing to trade up to 9? Wouldn't be willing to trade up a lot, right? Would be willing to just bounce up to 9 to maybe get a tackle for the future for their team. I'm thinking this is totally out of the range of what the Chargers would typically do, right? I'm thinking it's either got to be the Chargers or the Vikings. Vikings have not had I can't see the Vikings doing this. I can't see either team really doing this. Because as you see the tackles falling, more teams are going to be like, you know what? Wait, let's just hold. Kind of like last year. Let's just hold. But there's going to be a team that says, listen, we have to get up. We have to get our guy. I could see the Raiders doing it because they just paid Colton Miller. But again, another team that might enjoy having those values at assets. And they haven't really traded up a lot, right? The Raiders haven't traded up in a lot of drafts since Mayock and Gruden have been there. They traded back a little bit and not gotten a lot of value, but they've never really traded up. Also, they're not trading up to 9, right? They're just not going to do it because division rival. Chargers are also a division rival. I can't see any other team doing this. Honestly, I think the Broncos are stuck in a rock and a hard place, right? So what might they do? A couple weeks ago, I mocked them J.C. Horn. I think that's still a pick that's on the table. You don't have all those corners in your cornerback room forever. Bryce Callahan's a potential free agent after next year. So is Kyle Fuller. You're not going to bring both of those guys back. And J.C. Horn can play on the outside and on the inside. You've now built up depth in your cornerback room. He doesn't super fit what he doesn't really fit what Vic Fangio does. Like, Vic Fangio is a lot more of a zone-heavy kind of defensive coach. I don't know. If you have these guys on your roster, I think you might be like, hey, let's run a little bit more man coverage. Let's try to mix it up a bit. Because Vic Fangio is definitely probably willing to adapt. There's been talks about Christian Barmore potentially going top 15 recently. I think that's very valid. Only because, there's just not, after Barmore, there's a giant gap in the D-tackle class. A long gap. And then there's some D-tackles. So Barmore's going to possibly go top 15. I could see the Broncos being one of those teams that would definitely look at him. They could take they could take Sewell because they see the falling value, play him at tackle or guard initially, and then kick him out to they basically be playing one of them at tackle. Some teams actually do think Slater's a better player than Sewell, supposedly. I'm very curious about if I'd want to really pick up Slater. I know they have Lloyd Cushenberry. He did not play well last year. I don't think they're taking center up here. Surtain, I'd be less inclined to draft Surtain here. Wide receiver. So here's the other two options. Micah Parsons, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think I've already given them Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But I think he fits here because he adds a dynamic to their defense that they don't have. I still just think Penny Sewell, the level of prospect, you can easily move him to the right side. So I think 9 overall, Penny Sewell goes to the Denver Broncos, right? They put him in at right tackle. They try to get rid of the right tackle, Jawan James, who just hasn't played there in 2 years, and teams are kind of more questionable about the team itself is just questionable if he's actually going to play for him this year, probably too. So don't let good players prevent you from drafting great players. Jawan James is probably only there for one more year at most, and he's probably only there this year because it's a cap issue. 10 overall, and maybe they trade him at this point because, again, maybe another team needs a right tackle and they're willing to pay peanuts on him. 10 overall, perfect situation. Dallas Cowboys are here, and I think they take Patrick Surtain. He fits perfectly inside of Dan Quinn's defense. They're running a lot of that cover 3. Maybe he learns to adapt for the defense that that the Cowboys are going to run. But again, I think Surtain's perfect at 10. A couple other, they could have went defense here. They could have went defensive line here. Kwity Paye. I think this is maybe a little early for Kwity Paye. I think he does go in the top 15 picks. He's another one that, but there are kind of more things out there that's maybe suggesting Kwity Paye doesn't go in the top 15. I think teams might be afraid of the production. Some teams might have Azeez Ojulari higher on their board. I think Azeez Ojulari is a very good player. Jalen Phillips is another question. He's had the concussion issues. I've said that I think there's going to be a lot of teams out on him. So I don't think he's going to be going very high at this point. I don't think he's going top 10. I think every team has that worry because I think every team is going to be conscious about that, taking him in the top 10 to 15, especially when it's your job that's on the line. How do you take a player that you have this risk assessment on? So 11 overall, Giants are on the board. Comes down to a very good board, right? They could take Rashawn Slater here, Northwestern. He could play inside and then kick out to outside to right tackle for you. He could be an all-pro level guard his first year and then play tackle and be really good at it. They did get rid of Kevin Zeitler. And, I don't think Matt Pert prevents you from taking Rashawn Slater, even if he had a solid year last year. And Nate Solder doesn't prevent you from doing anything. So that's an option. Devontae Smith screams what Gettleman would do because this is I don't care about athleticism. I care about this guy being like that gold jacket kind of player. And that is kind of a Dave Gettleman thing. So I could easily see him taking Devonta Smith. Now, the question with Devonta Smith is, how many is Gettleman going to, how is Gettleman going to value that size, right? How is he going to value that, hey, this guy might be coming in at 170, 165. Is that okay? Are we okay with that? So, whereas Saquon was this athletic freak and Daniel Jones was just good at-ish at the Senior Bowl. He was good at the Senior Bowl. And he just liked him in person. So that kind of, I guess, helps. And, when you have a guy like, Dalvin Tomlinson, who they really like, who he really did, not Dalvin Tomlinson. My brain is cuckoo. The other D tackle that they drafted, the other Alabama D tackles, they draft a bunch of big D tackles in the freaking top 2 rounds. That Giants D tackle situation is quite amazing. I think they go. I could see them going Devontae Smith. I could see them going Rashad Bateman. Because Rashad Bateman, but the difference is I think the production the last year. There's a lot of receivers in this class whose their 2020 production was not as good as their 2019 production on the field. I think Rashad Bateman's going to be one of those guys that goes in the first round, but I think I'm going to go Devonta Smith here. I think this is one of the 2 guys on the board that I think they would go. The other one would be Rashawn Slater, but I think it's either Rashawn Slater or Devonta Smith. They did spend a first-round pick on a tackle last year. I don't think that prevents him from taking a tackle this year. You still need an offensive lineman, and he loves his hog mollies. I'm just going to go Devonta Smith as the board keeps on falling for the tackles. 12 overall, Eagles are on the board. They could go one of 2 ways. I think Rashawn Slater is definitely an option here because they love offensive linemen in Philadelphia, and they want to be back to winning the trenches. So they could easily take Rashawn Slater here, have him play interior offensive lineman, and even be left tackle for them because you don't know what Andre Dillard really is at this point. Do you want to keep playing that game, or do you want to cut your losses on Andre Dillard, or maybe kick him inside? J.C. Horn, also on the board, definitely an option for them. But I think he has some issues adapting to – he would have issues adapting to the defense that they are looking to play, which I believe would be maybe more zone-heavy, and I think J.C. Horn would be better suited towards a man coverage scheme. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I mean, I'm very intrigued about how analytic teams will value him because he is definitely a coverage guy, and stopping the pass is a big thing for analytic-based teams. And Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's value is stopping the pass in the middle of the field. I think the value on, if you're not getting JOK, you can take a safety that you want to kind of quasi-play at linebacker like Hamza Nazarudeen, Divine Diablo is another one. So at 12, what do? I think they could even trade down. They could take Christian Barmore because, again, Fletcher Cox is getting older. Brandon Graham, Kwity Paye is potentially an option. I'm now in love with the idea of them taking Christian Barmore. So Barmore at 18, there we go. Because I haven't done it before, and I've heard a little bit now he might be considered a top 15 pick by this NFL. So if you're a team that's rebuilding for the future, D-tackle's definitely a way, because the D-tackle sometimes take a couple years to get up to speed. 13 overall. Man, if the LA Chargers are at 13 and Rashawn Slater's on the board, they got to take him. I could easily see them going J.C. Horn here. Man, you know what? J.C. Horn. I lied. They went J.C. Horn. Because I could totally see them doing this. I could totally see the Chargers going J.C. Horn at 13 to be that man coverage guy in Brandon Staley's defense, where the rest of where he's playing these kind of strange coverage looks, where the one guy's the one guy's playing man coverage, the other guys are playing zone. J.C. Horn would be the guy who can give you that ability. I also, along with many other people, believe J.C. Horn is potentially cornerback 1 in this class. I say potentially because I think it depends on your value and what you value. I just like that they stuck J.C. Horn on guys' number 1 receivers. I think he was one of the most delightful tapes to watch, especially the Auburn game. But again, they put him on guys' number 1s. So 14 overall, Minnesota Vikings. It's quite possible they go defensive lineman here and go Kwity Paye, Azeez Ojulari, because I think, I've said it multiple times. I think they are more inclined to spend a second-round pick on offensive linemen and spend a high-end first-round pick. I think I've given them Kwity Paye every time. I think I want to go Kwity Paye here. Rashawn Slater, though, I think a lot of teams are going to value him. And what a good offensive lineman could do for this team is insane. But I think between Brian O'Neill and how they feel about Ezra Cleveland, I think they'll take a guard and kick Ezra Cleveland out to tackle, or maybe they'll take a tackle in the next round. So, no, they don't even have a second-round pick either. They could easily be a team that looks to trade back a little bit. I just don't think there's a team on the board that they would be trading back with. I think you gotta go Slater here, man. At this point, the value's there, right? They'll find ways of getting edge rush, right? They've blitzed Anthony Barr before. They're getting Danielle Hunter back. So I think they will feel okay with that. I think there will be edge rushers in the second round that they can go for. 15 overall, Falcons are back on the board. This is finally where the board has fallen to them. All the edge rushers are there. Kwity Paye, Azeez Ojulari. I could easily see them going corner. J.C. Horn did not make it to them at 15. That would be, I think, the top guy on their board because, again, they have Dean Pease there. He going to be blitzing like crazy. Like it says birthday. But I don't think that's going to be the deal on this one. I think here, since they don't have a man coverage corner on the back end, I think they go edge rusher here because I think they try to cheat one way or the other here. I'm going Kwity Paye, 15 overall. I just think teams will value Kwity Paye higher than Azeez Ojulari, even though I might kind of be more on the Ojulari track than Kwity Paye. 16 overall, Arizona Cardinals are on the table. I don't think they go D lineman here. I think it's Greg Newsome. They're also a team that could trade up to maybe get a corner, to make sure, if J.C. Horn's falling, they might call up the Eagles and be like, yo, Eagles, we need corner. We'll give you a third or a second. Let us come back, get up a little bit further so we can get ourselves a starting corner. So now our defense looks a little bit more complete. They took a guy like they took Isaiah Simmons last year, so I don't see them taking JOK here. Although he would totally be a fun fit with their defense. I don't see them taking Azeez Ojulari. I think it's Greg Newsome. I could easily. I think last time I had him taking Caleb Farley. I think a couple of times. I think it's usually a corner I have them take. I probably could even next time have them trade up to 12 with the Eagles because I think the Eagles would be interested in that. 17 overall. The Raiders are on the board. Let's go to offense, offensive line. Go to tackle first. Tevin Jenkins, Samuel Cosme, Darisaw, Leatherwood, Dylan Radins, Spencer Brown. There's a lot of guys who are very athletic in this draft class. They can go the way that they went with Colton Miller the last time, where they missed out on Mike McGlinchey. They didn't get their guy. They traded back for a couple of cheap picks, like not a lot of picks. They were like thirds and fourth rounders. I think it was like something about the value of those picks wasn't really like I think it was a couple of fourth rounders. Like I think Gruden was the spearhead of that, and I don't think he checked what the value of those picks would have been. And took Colton Miller, who has turned out to be a very good player for them. I could see them taking Samuel Cosme here. I think last time I had him taking Tevin Jenkins. I think I always have him taking Tevin Jenkins. In fact, I'm gonna try and be different. Oh, aren't you special? I'm gonna have him take Samuel Cosme out of Texas. I think the athleticism is going to intrigue them. I think he kind of fits differently. I think Tevin Jenkins is the pick. I just had to go different for a mock draft here or there. So, yeah, Samuel Cosme's on off the board, 18 overall. Miami Dolphins are on the board, right? They took Jalen Waddle. I think they could easily go defense. They can go edge rusher here. Like I've had potentially them taking Jalen Phillips before. They could go offensive lineman. I think this is a good spot for Tevin Jenkins to come off the board. Or is it? Could they go Darisaw? They could easily go Darisaw. They could also take Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah or Micah Parsons for that defense. Oh, that's so they also are the team that would not be as worried about Micah Parsons and his off the field concerns, I think. And that's something that, like, again, Brian Flores, very big developer of talent, especially on the defensive side. I think that's what they're going to be counting on for that. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah be just an interesting chess piece for them. Oh, I don't know. I think it's either or. I think here I'm going JOK. I think this is where JOK comes off the board to Miami. At 19 overall, Panthers are on the board. They didn't take anybody yet because they traded back with the Washington football team so that the football team can go up and get Trey Lance. Now they're on the board. They have Christian Darisaw, Elijah Vera Tucker, Tevin Jenkins. Oh, well, Tevin Jenkins plays right tackle. They just tagged Moton. I would typically go Tevin Jenkins here. They could get him to switch, but they don't necessarily have, like, are they going to try and do the Browns thing where the Browns took a right tackle and played him at left? It's a possibility. I think at that point, the Virginia Tech tackle, Darisaw, would be a much better option. Leatherwood and Leatherwood would be an option. Who's the one? I keep forgetting the damn name of my boy. Dylan Radins, I think they could maybe get a little bit later. Liam Eichenberg, I think his arms came in a little short, so I don't know how they'll feel about his arm length issues. So I'm thinking here they go Darisaw, Virginia Tech. 20 overall, Bears are on the board. It's going to be a run on tackles all day long. At 20, I think they take Alex Leatherwood. I do. Because he could play right or left tackle. So they kept Leno. They got rid of Bobby Massey. 21 overall, Colts are on the board. Again, another team that's going to be everybody's going to be scrambling for offensive linemen in this draft. So at 21 overall, I think this is where the buck stops here on, oh, dang. It's going to be so strange when we get to 24 and Tevin Jenkins is on the board. Oh, no, Tevin Jenkins won't be on the board. Never mind. I forget that I'm running this mock draft. So I don't have to make sure. I can make sure he's not on the board at 24. Which, if you don't know, 24 is the Steelers. I could see at 21 them going Spencer Brown, Liam Eichenberg. I've had them take Liam Eichenberg like 30 times too. I would love for them to take. They could also trade out because that's often what the Colts do. I think it's Eichenberg here though. They might take Dylan Radins. I think that's another option for them. Might be. Oh, this is really high for Dylan Radins. 22 overall. Titans are on the board. They can go wide receiver. They can go right tackle. They can go corner. I think all three of those are possible options. The problem is, who are the options on the table at corner? Is this a little high for guys like Afetu Melifonwu and Caleb Farley with the back question marks? Maybe, maybe not. I think this might be a repeat draft of what the Titans might do this year, what they kind of did last year, where they take a right tackle in the first and then a corner in the second to kind of fill out their roster. At 22, I think they take Tevin Jenkins. I think he's actually maybe one of the best players on the board that's left. 23 overall. Dang, the Jets. I almost would have given them Tevin Jenkins too. They could just go basically best player available to them. I would have had them take Tevin Jenkins here. They could take Elijah Vera Tucker, build up that interior, that defense, that offensive line. I wouldn't put it past. Joe Douglas to go ahead and draft an interior offensive lineman at 23, especially like if he thought that one was really good. Rashad Bateman's still on the board. I could easily see them taking Rashad Bateman. I don't know if they're as pressed to take wide receiver, though, given the fact that they signed Corey Davis. They still have Denzel Mims. They kept Jamison Crowder. So I don't think the wide receiving core I'm all that nervous about. I think I'm more nervous about the offensive line and keeping or the edge rush talent. I think I got to go Elijah Vera Tucker here. I think he's the best interior offensive lineman. You get him to play right guard. I think it'll help bring up Connor McGovern. You'll still have a question mark at left guard, but you could also resolve that in this draft. Also, again, Elijah Vera Tucker can play tackle. He has played tackle, but his better position in the NFL is guard. So you'll have him play right tackle. You'll have him play right guard. George Fant play right tackle, and at least you've bolstered up your offensive line. You could still address tackle in this draft, especially because you have a couple of more picks on day. You have quite a few more picks on day 2. Steelers at 23 overall, 24 overall. I think it's offensive linemen are bust for the Steelers. They could go Wyatt Davis out of Ohio State, Trey Smith. It's still, I think they might value guard higher if there's a guard on the board. Creed Humphrey and Landon Dickerson are options. I don't know at 24 they would do this because, again, I think this is kind of not a good value. Corner, they might take a shot on Caleb Farley. They kind of value guys like Eric Stokes. He kind of seems a lot like an Artie Burns clone. So they could easily go Stokes here. I don't think they would take Afetu Melifonwu. I don't think he really fits what that scheme does, and I just don't think he's kind of their style of player. Asante Samuel Jr. is an option I could see them going with. Tyson Campbell, but I feel like it's a little early for him. Could they go edge rusher? Sure, they could go Azeez Ojulari. I think they felt okay with what they got from Alex Highsmith last year, and they have T.J. Watt. They have the interior defensive line trio of Tyson Alualu and Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. So I think I definitely can't see him going to D-tackle. Micah Parsons on the board. They traded up for a linebacker 2 years ago. That's gone okay for them, I guess, but can't see them doing that. I could see them going Caleb Farley. I could see them. I just think offensive linemen. I think they pigeonholed themselves into this pick for offensive linemen. They just don't have any guys on the roster that I would really feel comfortable with. It also, there's a Aditi Kinkabwala had actually talked about this a while back, where she said they had like a really good defensive player on the board a few years ago, and the ownership said, listen, you've got to get an offensive lineman in here. They took the next best offensive lineman on the board. I'm going Wyatt Davis. I know it's not a tackle. I think they can maybe get one of the other tackles that are like interesting on day 2, like maybe trade up in the second round to go ahead and get Spencer Brown, one of the more athletic guys. But I think interior is a big question mark for them. They've also been a team that's valued interior offensive line play more so than the tackles, right? They never really paid their tackles a lot. They let those guys walk, but they've always kind of paid the interior trio, them, the Patriots. There's quite a few teams that have done that in the past. So I could see them doing this where they get Wyatt Davis, they have DeCastro for maybe one more year, maybe the next round they trade up to get Creed Humphrey or they take Landon Dickerson, guys who the value will fall to them. At 25 overall, we're now with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I have them taking Micah Parsons because this definitely seems like a Urban Meyer maneuver where you're taking this super athlete who has some off-the-field question marks, but, shown some really good aptitude to play linebacker and can do quite a lot for you, not just as a linebacker, but as a blitzer and in coverage. You're kind of projecting the coverage a little bit. You're kind of projecting off of his athleticism, which I feel like is a little worrisome if you're projecting a super athlete just to be good in coverage. But he has the athleticism to be good in man coverage at least. So, at minimum, you can maybe get him to be a blitz backer, which again, their new defensive coordinator is coming from the Ravens tree. So again, that's a team that played a lot of coverage over pass rush. I could totally see them going this route. 26 overall. A lot of talk this week about maybe the Browns signing Clowney. Kind of talked about a little bit off the top. At 26 overall, I think the Cleveland Browns look at the board. They go, you know what? Rashad Bateman, definitely an option. Zizzo Ojulari, definitely an option. Jason Owe, an option. Caleb Farley, an option. Travis Morig, an option. Trevon Morig is an option. But when you look at the whole board, even like Joseph Osai is an option. I think depending on how you value Rashad Bateman, I can't believe Rashad Bateman's even here. And there's going to be a guy who wants to murder me for saying no to Rashad Bateman. But I'll tell you why I'm going to be saying no to Rashad Bateman. They get 26 overall. They get a trade offer, right? They're the Browns, so they'll do it. And the team that is calling up the Browns is the former Saxonville, and they will be calling up the Browns to come up, and they'll be trading for the 33rd pick. And I think the Browns would want more than this, but I think the only thing the Browns can really get at this stage, I could see them taking 65 and maybe a 4th in 2022, because I think teams are going to value the 22 picks a little bit more. I don't know if the Jags would trade a second to move up. Was it 9 spots? I think if the Browns were getting a call from somebody further back, I could see the Browns taking 106 and a 3rd next year. Let's see that. A 3rd next year. I think that. All right. So the Browns move back 9 picks. They get a day 2 pick next year. This is something I think the Browns want to do. They want to garner picks for the future. I would have maybe given them a 2nd rounder if there was somebody further back to trade with. At this moment, I think the Jaguars are on the board. They go ahead. They trade for they traded up. They trade up to draft safety Trevon Morig. Back-to-back picks in the 1st round. They get Trevon Morig, safety at a TCU. I think he's going to be maybe the only safety that goes in the top, 32, 35 picks. So, but he could easily go in the next 5. The Jaguars want to get in front of the Baltimore Ravens, who have a safety issue. The Saints might not be able to keep Marcus Williams for more than a year if they can't extend him. The Bills definitely value safety and have Poyer and Micah Hyde, but maybe want to get a guy on the roster who's a little bit younger to, eventually those guys will go out to pasture. The Packers are on will be coming up. They're another team that could easily take Trevon Morig and value that pick and value that player because, again, they've had a lot of safety. They've had a lot of coverage busts. To get a guy who's a very smart, big, athletic, versatile safety would be perfect for them. Kansas City Chiefs, another team that could probably use a better safety than Daniel Sorensen, Although they do have Juan Thornhill, who they drafted, a couple years ago, who this year was coming off an ACL, and Tyrann Mathieu. But safety is becoming a position that's highly devalued, and we're seeing defenses get better just from having good safety play. And then the Buccaneers, 32 overall. They again could also go this route. So I think there was quite a few options for the Jags to quite a few teams for the Jags to try to avoid. And again, they get a 5th-year option on Trevon Moehrig. This is where the arbitrage comes, because now the 5th-year option, if the player plays really well, it's almost like a franchise tag, or it really does become the franchise tag after a certain amount of Pro Bowls. Safety is one of those positions that even if Trevon Moehrig hits the top end of his pay scale, odds are the safety position under the franchise tag is not going to be all that expensive towards the end of that deal. So they could still just franchise tag him either way. If he doesn't hit all those Pro Bowls and he's just a solid, really good player, his 5th-year option is going to be a lot cheaper than that. So this is one of those things where those guys might be valuable. It might change the devaluation of those positions where you might want those guys at the back end of the first round. 27 overall, Baltimore Ravens. Spent all this time talking about the Jags and why they would trade up. They would trade up 6 picks. 27 overall, Baltimore Ravens are on the board. I could see them taking Caleb Farley because that would definitely be a guy who would be in their wheelhouse. I don't think the back injury scares a lot of teams. They would also be a team that I could see going offensive linemen here. Walker Little, Brady Christensen. I think this is really high for those kind of guys. Dylan Radins is a potential option. Defensively, I mean, Azeez Ojulari still on the board. Jamin Davis, Joseph Osai. I think Caleb Farley. I would have had them going Trevon Moehrig here. JOK they would definitely go for. I think. I don't know if they would go Micah Parsons. I think JOK would probably be the end of that. I think they could go Creed Humphrey. They kind of need interior offensive linemen. It's not the worst spot. I wouldn't be, but they also don't. They aren't as worried about positional value, and they just need better interior offensive linemen. I think Creed Humphrey would make sense here for them. 28 overall, the Saints, they're on the board. They are going through a huge roster reconstruction, right? At 28 overall, let's see. They'd probably go best player available to them. Rashad Bateman's still on the board. The fact that there actually were rumors a couple of weeks ago that Rashad Bateman might fall the 2nd round. I'm not going to have him fall that far. Rashad Bateman, though, fits very much what the Packers kind of like in a player, or could get like in a player. The Saints, while I think Rashad Bateman would be good for them, they lost a lot of defensive talent and not a lot of offensive talent. So I could see them going maybe in the next round, wide receiver. Bateman would definitely be an option for them, though. Azeez Ojulari is still on the board. Joseph Osai, who's very similar to an edge rusher who they had in Marcus Davenport. I think I've given them Barmore in the past. I think Caleb Farley. I think the Saints would stop the Caleb Farley fall. They seem to be a little bit not okay with injury concerns because they still, but like, for instance, when Ryan Ramczyk fell a few years ago, they took Ryan Ramczyk at the end of the first round with the second first-round pick that they had from a trade for trading away Max Unger. Not Max Unger. They traded for Max Unger, and they traded away Jimmy Graham. Weird that they got a good starting center and a first-round pick for a tight end who was good, but really didn't do much. And again, when he was with Seattle, granted he had the injury, the patella tendon tear. At 29 overall, Packers on the board. I think Packers fans are probably going to be like, you're just rooting for Aaron Rodgers and you're a good fan of ours now. No, listen, I'm a Browns fan, everybody. Don't worry. But I do think this is actually where they could go. Packers, 29. They take Rashad Bateman. At 30, because, again, Bateman has this inside-out versatility that I think if you paired him up with Devontae Adams, again, another guy with inside-out versatility, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, they don't have a lot of receivers on the roster for the next few years. Even if they extend, they need to go receiver. They need receivers on rookie contracts because they're running out. on a lot of the guys who are currently on the roster. 30 overall, the Bills are on the board. This is where Azeez Ojulari's fall stops. I think they're looking for the guy to be opposite Jerry Hughes, also to eventually replace Jerry Hughes. They need edge rushers. So, Bills 30 overall. Take Azeez Ojulari. They don't even think about it. They could take corner. I don't think there's a corner at this spot that I could see them taking. 31 overall. Kansas City Chiefs, right? Chiefs are on the board. They had a ton of offensive line question marks, right? This might be where Spencer Brown goes, who showed a lot of athleticism, but again, is more developmental. Dylan Radins is on the board. I think he's a little bit better of a prospect. Brady Christensen, I'm not at this spot. I like Brady Christensen, not this much. Stone Forsythe has gotten a lot of talk, so maybe I could put him here. I think this is a little early, but I think this is kind of where he's going to go in the top 50. There's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk about him maybe even making it to the first round. If that's the case, Florida offensive tackle Stone Forsythe goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. 32 overall, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And for them, 32 overall. At this spot, they can go literally anywhere they want. They could take offensive linemen to eventually replace I think Devin Smith. No, the left tackle who but he's finally coming along on his own. He's actually looking like he's playing well. That all offensive line is looking like they're playing well. And if there's offensive linemen here, yeah, go ahead. But there just doesn't look like there is one for them to take. Edge rusher, because JPP is getting a little bit older. They could take Joseph Osai, Jason Owe. Those guys are super athletes who are kind of relatively new to the position, who I could definitely see them taking. For edge rusher, Gregory Rousseau, who, he's more of a developmental guy at this stage, I feel like, because I don't think you know what Rousseau is, right? He's big, he's long. He got a lot of his production coming up the center and over guards, and really didn't win a lot of reps on the outside. What he has is length and strength, and he bulked up. He's now probably about another 22 pounds up. I think here they go Joseph Osai, or they could go Jamin Davis to eventually replace who's the guy who I'm thinking of? The one that they just re-signed eventually. You know what? Nah, here they go Joseph Osai. They go developmental edge rusher, but not super developmental. Like, he could play right away, but I think he's going to be better off and better served being part of a rotation with Shaq Barrett, with JPP. Now you have Joseph Osai. You have Vita Vea. You're getting to keep Sue for another year. So I'm going to do a couple more picks into the second round, then I'll wrap it up. Because 33 overall now is the Browns, and they're at the top of the second round. And there's actually some real value to this pick. A lot of times the team that picks at the top of the second round, that player ends up being a lot more valuable, a lot better of a player sometimes. The hit rate sometimes at the top of the round, at the beginning of the next day. Apparently there's been some evidence that those players play really well. So this is why I could see the Browns maybe wanting to trade back to the top of the second round, because the hit rate on those players might be better. Guys who they could possibly take, they could also look at a trade back here at 33, because they are now at 33. You can now field calls for day 2. You could be like, yo, Broncos, you want to come up? I know you guys might want to be taking an edge rusher or a tackle or a corner, and again, try to build up more picks for the future. I think that's definitely going to be a thing, because as the Browns roster ages out, they're going to want to keep on drafting guys at higher level picks. So here, 33 overall. Pretend they don't have an option on the table. I think they could go Owe here. I think they could go Jalen Phillips. I know people like Jalen Phillips. I still have the worries with him. Rousseau, the problem is we never saw him play 245. This is where I think Owe comes off the board. All right? Now, I don't know if they've had a lot of conversations with Owe, but Penn State edge rusher has, again, purely athletic freak, shows a lot of disruption on tape, can get into the backfield. I don't know if the 3-cone really sells it for me on his lateral movement. I was actually thinking he was a little bit more stiff on tape. But he had a very good 3-cone, sub-7 3-cone. I think that kind of tells me that I think he was playing. I don't think his defense was playing to what he could do better as an edge rusher. It was, we want you to play the run. We want you to play that first. And then we will do what we can just as long as we don't get gashed. So I think Owe has a lot of ceiling to him. He was keying in a lot on the run. So I think there are things that he has to still develop. He had 0 sacks this year. He had 7 career sacks. But I think he has the athletic upside to be a very fun pass rusher, especially if you now have him alongside or behind Myles Garrett and now getting to rush all those crazy athletic freaks in Jadeveon Clowney, Tack McKinley, Myles Garrett. 34 overall. I'm going to do the Jets, and I'm going to do the Falcons, and I'm going to maybe wrap it up. Maybe also I'll do the Miami Dolphins because I think this is a good pick to do too. 34 overall. I think the Jets could, again, go offensive lineman again. I think they could take a corner. Ifeatu Melifonwu fits kind of what their defensive scheme likes. They haven't really signed a corner in free agency. He kind of has that build of what's it called? Of those cover 3 corners. Given the fact that those cover 3 corners don't usually come off the board this high, though, I think they might be looking a couple of other options. Wide receiver, they could take Terrence Marshall Jr., Pat Freiermuth for tight end. They could take Kadarius Toney, a little bit of a run after the catch guy, kind of a gadget wide receiver. Elijah Moore, wide receiver, Mississippi. Ole Miss, again, he's going to be a guy who you can go ahead and he's going to be electric. He's going to be one of those guys who can just get around the field. I do question a little bit. I am a little worried with Elijah Moore about can he line up on the outside and do that very well. At 34 overall, I don't mind that too bad. I think he can probably end up being the replacement for Jamison Crowder when they get rid of him. I think they'll what he can do just movement-wise. I think he's definitely an option here. Defensively, Gregory Rousseau still on the board. Ifeatu Melifonwu, Zaven Collins, Jamin Davis. Jamin Davis is a very athletic linebacker. Could be kind of that. Goddamn, who's the one that's a Fred Warner kind of role that they had over in San Francisco, or again what Darius Leonard is for the Colts. I think that's a possibility here. They could also trade back. They could take Jalen Phillips to go along with their injury question mark defensive line. I think I get a little bit worried with that one. They could take Carlos Basham. He's a little bit older of a prospect. I kind of like the idea of them taking Carlos Basham, though, because he's very versatile. He has kind of a Frank Clark, Michael Bennett kind of build to him. So I'm gonna go Carlos Basham. I think he's the kind of guy that our boy Saleh would like. I think he's a top 50 player, top 40 player. I think he could even go first round for some teams. I think that's kind of what the Jets need. They need another guy who they can rely on to be an edge rushing presence, can kick into the inside on true pass rushing downs. Falcons are on the board. I think they also have to go defense too. Have to is kind of a strong word though. I think they go, and this might not be a big favorite pick for a lot of teams, but I could see them go Kelvin Joseph. I think teams are going to be questioning Kelvin Joseph off the field. Eric Stokes. Ooh, that'd be an interesting one. I think they look corner here, right? Because it's a deep corner class, but also keep in mind, given what the Falcons' new D coordinator values, man coverage corners are going to be a big thing for them. I could see them taking Asante Samuel Jr., Tyson Campbell. I think I'll have them go Stokes. Yeah, we'll do Stokes. Stokes. Totally stoked for Stokes. Miami Dolphins on the board. I'm going to have them going Jalen Phillips. They are not afraid, I think, of the concussion risk because what he brings at this stage, especially given all of your extra picks, he gives you that ability to, if you whiff on this pick, it's not going to hurt you as much. That's the value of having this being essentially your third pick in this draft at the second round. And you have another one in the second round. So Jalen Phillips, 36 overall. I think that's a perfect fit. for what the Miami Dolphins need as far as on the defense. They need a true edge rusher. Here's a true edge rusher for you. You can combine him with the Byron Jones and the Xavier Howard, and dear God, that defense is going to be crazy lit. Eagles 37. Oh, what would they do? They could take one of the more developmental edges. I just don't see that here. I think they can go Terrence Marshall Jr. Yeah, I think that would work for them very well. They could, they would also maybe value Efetu Melifonwu, kind of, again, another similar guy to Rocky Sin over with the Colts. So I think here at 37 overall, they go Efetu Melifonwu. 38 overall, the Bengals are on the board. We're now at 12:30, so I'm going to be wrapping this up soon, but maybe I'll get to 40 here. 38 overall, they, I mentioned before, they might want an offensive lineman. Offensive tackles are on the board. Dylan Radins is still here. Jalen Mayfield, Spencer Brown, Brady Christensen. Offensive guard, Trey Smith's on the board. Ben Cleveland. And Landon Dickerson's still here. Oh. Do you take the other injury risk player? Like, their center's coming back from an injury very late in the year. To take Landon Dickerson would be kind of a weird setup for them, so I feel like that's kind of worrisome. I would love it if he was healthy, or if they had already taken an offensive lineman. Dylan Radins, I could see them going that route. Guard, Trey Smith, Ben Cleveland. James Hudson just did not test as athletic as people thought he would. Walker Little, this is still way too early for Walker Little. Jamin Davis, I don't think they go this early at linebacker. Cornerback, no, they draft all their defensive needs. They're going offense here. It's a very offensive draft. I guess I'll give them Trey Smith. I think they still need a guard anyway. So at 39 overall, Panthers are on the board. Previously, I gave them Christian Darrisaw, right? Offense is on the docket for this draft for them. Last year they went straight defense. Terrence Marshall Jr. would be an interesting one, but they have nobody who could really play. Like, they have guys who could maybe play in the slot. Like, you could put DJ Moore in the slot, and I think he'd be just like, oh my God, just brilliant. They can go Rondale Moore. I think Terrence Marshall Jr. gives them the ability to play DJ Moore in the slot, which just gives your guy the best matchup ever. They have Robbie Anderson take the top off as well. So now you have 3 athletic receivers. Terrence Marshall also happens to know Joe Brady because he played in that offense. So now you're going to the guy who actually trained you in the offense. Now you kind of might know some of that playbook. I think this is so much value for them to get him at the top of the second round. 40 overall. The Denver Broncos are up. Who did I have them take? Denver Broncos took Penei Sewell. Again, a team that does not really need much as far as players go. I can see them taking Elijah Molden out of Washington, who can be kind of like a quasi-slot corner, but also safety, super athletic for safety. So now you're getting a guy who can cover guys out of the slot, who could also play safety. You're going to be losing Kareem Jackson after this year probably because he's old now, and, like, again, they got him back for a cheap deal. But, again, I just think this is, like, the perfect place to take him. And at 41, I'm going to have the Detroit Lions. They're just going to take whoever's on the board that fits for what they want to do. Edge, they could take Gregory Rousseau, Ronnie Perkins, Peyton Turner, Joe Tryon, Rashad Weaver. Corner, they have a decent corner room as it is. I just don't think it prevents them from doing anything. I think they're going to be wanting to bite kneecaps and play man coverage. Asante Samuel Jr. at 41 for the Detroit Lions. 42, the New York Giants are on the board, and this is the last pick of the night, everybody, because this is where I'm going to go bye-bye and take a nap. They're going to go offensive line, I think. Maybe. Oh, yeah, we're getting Hog Males. Ben Cleveland out of Georgia. This guy is big, and he can move, and he's a mauler, and I think this is the kind of pick that Mr. Dave Gettleman would go. He wants a hog molly. Well, they don't make bigger hogs than Ben Cleveland. That sounds very rude. And that's where we're going to wrap it up because the draft is in Cleveland, and the Giants took Ben Cleveland, and that's how we will end. 42 overall. There's about another there's some more picks in this round. What I might do is come back on tomorrow and finish up the rest of the second round as well as the third round. And thank you. You know what? You can follow the podcast at Draftvice on Twitter, at Draftvice_football. You can follow me at BROJO. Death is in the end of life. Punching a delicious drink you drink in the summer. I hope this was fun for you, everybody, because it was fun for me. Take care. Ta-ta now. Goodbye. Say alubadu. I don't know what that was.
We're on the same
When I
side.
woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
One about the past and one about the future.